This absurd incident noticeably upset Chichikov. The most stupid utterances of a fool can sometimes make a wise man lose his bearings. He began to feel ill at ease, like a man who, wearing very nicely shined shoes, suddenly finds himself standing in a muddy, evil-smelling puddle. He tried to forget it, and to distract himself joined a game of whist, but nothing would run smoothly for him. Just as a buckled wheel won't roll. Twice he played the wrong color, and then he forgot the rule that the third person to play should never play a trump. The president of the district court was at a loss, seeing his dear friend Chichikov, usually such an excellent and, so to speak, subtle player, lure to its doom the president's, his partner's, king of spades, in which, as he put it, he had placed his trust as in God. Of course, the postmaster, the president, and the police chief ribbed him, as is often done during card games, inquiring whether he hadn't fallen in love, saying that they were aware that his heart had been captured and that they could guess by whom. This, however, didn't make him feel any better, although he tried hard to respond in kind and to smile. During supper, again, he could not relax despite the fact that the company was pleasant, and Nozdrov had been helped out long before, when even the ladies had remarked that his behavior was really too scandalous. He had seated himself on the dance floor in the middle of the cotillion, and had started grabbing at the dancers' skirts, which was really too much to tolerate, as the ladies said. The supper was very gay. There was a look of carefree contentment on the faces gleaming among the three-branched candlesticks and the bottles. Officers, ladies, frock coats, everything became amiable even to the point of mawkishness. Gentlemen kept jumping up, rushing to grab dishes from the servants' hands and offering them to the ladies, displaying staggering agility. A colonel preferred a sauce dish to a lady, balancing it on the unsheathed blade of his sword. The more mature gentlemen around Chichikov were having a loud discussion interrupted by mouthfuls of fish or beef unmercifully plastered with mustard. This discussion touched upon subjects on which Chichikov usually liked to air his opinions. This time, however, he resembled a man tired and broken by a long and painful journey, who simply can't think and who can concentrate on nothing. He couldn't wait for the end of the supper and left much earlier than usual. Back in his room, with which we are already familiar, with its dressing table barricading the second door and cockroaches peeking out of the corners, he sat down in an uncomfortable armchair with thoughts that were just as uncomfortable. He felt dejected. His heart was painfully empty. "Damn the people who invented those stupid balls," he muttered angrily. "What are the stupid fools so happy about? The province is suffering from poor harvests, prices are rising, and all they know are these balls, and the women draped in all those rags. Just to think that some of them manage to wind 1,000 rubles worth of stuff around themselves. And who pays for it? The peasants, out of whom every last kopeck is squeezed. And, even worse, they've sold their own consciences to pay for it all. Who doesn't know why bribes are taken and consciences are compromised? To get one's wife a shawl or some ornaments or whatever they call those things, damn them. And why do they do it? So that someone's wife can't say that the postmaster's wife had a better dress than her own. And for her sake, pop goes 1,000-ruble bill. And then they get excited. "A ball," they shout. "Let's go to a ball and have some fun." But a ball isn't a Russian institution, and it doesn't suit our Russian nature. Stop and think. A fully grown, mature man suddenly starts leaping around with mincing feet, dressed in tight black clothes, his face like a plucked chicken. Two men will even discuss some important matter, while each of them, paired off with his lady, is capering about with his legs flying to right and left like a goat. It's all foolishness, nothing but foolishness. If a Frenchman is as childish at 40 as he was at 15, is that any reason for us to imitate him? No, really, after a ball, I have such a feeling of guilt that I'd rather not remember it. Your head is as empty as after a conversation with a member of high society. He'll talk to you about anything, touch upon everything, and whatever he says has been plucked from books, is eloquent and colorful, but leaves no mark on the mind for the person listening. It makes one realize that a talk with even the simplest merchant who knows nothing outside his business, but knows that thoroughly from experience, is better than all this prattle. And what do you get out of a ball, after all? Let's suppose that some author tried to describe the whole scene just as it is. Well, it would be as senseless in his book as it is in reality. What is it? Is it moral or immoral? Who the devil can tell? In the end, you get tired of the whole business and shut the book. Such was Chichikov's unfavorable opinion of balls in general, although we believe that in this instance he had an additional reason for loathing balls. He was not so much angry at balls as such as at the fact that he had tripped up so badly and presented God knows how unfavorable a picture to the world, as though he were playing some second, unsavory role. Of course, looking at it from a practical point of view, he couldn't fail to realize that what had happened was of no real importance, that some foolish words couldn't alter anything since the main business had been completed. But human behavior is inscrutable. He was depressed at the thought of the disapproval of the very people he despised, at whose vanity and general behavior he had laughed. And what hurt him most was that the more he thought about the matter, the more clearly he realized that he himself was partly responsible for it all. He was not angry with himself, though. And in this, of course, he was right. We all have the little vice of sparing ourselves and prefer to find someone handy on whom we can take out our spite, a servant, a sluggish subordinate, a wife, or finally, a chair that can be hurled God knows where, even across a room, so that its broken back and legs may evidence your rage. Chichikov discovered a scapegoat soon enough. The scapegoat, in this instance, was Nozdrev, and it must be said that he was given a going-over, as thorough as any a village elder or a driver gets from some experienced army captain passing by, or perhaps even by a general who, besides using the full array of invective, which has become formalized by now, adds several new expressions of his own invention. Nozdrev's entire family tree was analyzed, and many of his forebears fared rather badly. But while sitting in his hard armchair, disturbed by his unpleasant thoughts, unable to sleep, zestfully abusing Nozdrev and all his kin, with the tallow candle almost out, a sooty black cap around the wick, while the blind, black night about to turn blue with the approach of dawn was staring in at the window, while distant roosters crowed to one another, and, perhaps, some modest overcoat of undefined rank and class dragged itself through the deserted streets, following, alas, the only too well-trodden path of the hard-drinking Russian people. While all this was happening, other events that were to lead to a further deterioration in Chichikov's position were brewing at the other end of town. A very strange, indefinable vehicle rattled through the remote side streets. It was neither a coach nor a chaise nor a calash. It rather resembled a fat watermelon on wheels. The doors of this contraption, cut in the cheeks of the watermelon, bore traces of yellow paint and did not close properly because of the ramshackle state of locks and handles held together with string. The watermelon was filled with cushions in the shape of tobacco pouches, bolsters, and everyday cushions, and was stuffed with bags containing loaves of bread, rolls, donuts, and pretzels. There were even chicken pies and fish pies. The step was occupied by a personage, obviously a flunky, dressed in a jacket sewed together from odds and ends of material. The face was unshaven, and the stubble showed streaks of gray. In brief, someone usually addressed as, "Hey, you!" The rattling and screeching of the rusty springs woke the night watchman at the other end of town, who, his mind still fogged, shouted with all his strength, "Who's there?" But having heard just a remote rumble and unable to see anything, he shot out his hand and caught some sort of beast on the back of his collar. Then he walked over to the streetlight, examined his prey, and proceeded to execute it under his thumbnail, after which he discarded his halberd and, conforming to the rules of his nightly order, went back to sleep. The unshod horses kept stumbling, obviously unfamiliar with the urban cobblestones. After a few turns, the freak vehicle turned into a small dark street, passed the little parish church of St. Nicholas, and stopped before the house of the deacon. Out of the watermelon emerged a peasant girl, wearing a kerchief over her hair and a quilted jacket, who started banging on the gate with the vigor that a man might have envied. The fellow on the step had to be pulled down later by his feet, for it turned out he had been fast asleep all this time. Dogs barked. The gate opened, and, with an obvious effort, managed to swallow the cumbersome traveling contraption. The carriage drove into a crowded yard heaped with logs, chicken coops, and all sorts of cages, and out of it stepped a lady who was none other than Mother Korobotchka, widow of a collegiate secretary, and now a landowner in her own right. After Chichikov had left her, she had worried that she might have been cheated. She had passed 3 sleepless nights and had then decided to drive to town, disregarding the fact that her horses were unshod. She felt she had to find out the current price for dead souls and whether or not she'd sold hers, God forbid, for perhaps as little as a third of their worth. The consequences of her arrival will become clear from the conversation between 2 ladies. This conversation, but let's keep it for the next chapter.